Jake L. Fischer appears on the CHGO Bulls podcast and shares details on the Chicago Bulls' potential trade plans at the deadline. And this is going to be concerning for some Bulls fans. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, Patrick Williams returns to practice. And as the December 15th deadline shows up, a couple of Bulls are going to be eligible to be traded. And one that a writer suggested the Bulls should move may shock some Bulls fans. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And so, Jake L. Fischer was on the CHGO Bulls podcast and talking about the Chicago Bulls, the trade deadline plans, and we're going to get into those and what they could actually mean. Now, as I say with every insider across the NBA, this is everybody. It's not just Bulls insiders. Take everything with a grain of salt. A lot of I think writers do hear some rumblings of some things from other GMs. A lot of things never actually come to pass, and that's just the nature of the business, right? But Jake L. Fischer said this: I don't think the Bulls have a clear-cut stamped, we're going to do this and we're going to do this no matter what, and they're going to follow those marching orders. I think there is some wiggle room and some margins for, all right, let's see how the team does. Let's see what the price is we're not going to move him for that kind of thing. There are so many sliding parts. I just don't think the Bulls are Utah, Washington, or Brooklyn like we are selling. I think they're willing to sell everyone, but it's a matter of what's going to come in. Now, that quote I know is going to lead some Bulls fans, depending on their already predetermined view, a lot of different ways. There are going to be some people that look at it and say, you know what, you're right. You should not sell off your assets if the value isn't there. There are going to be some that still look at it as, does this Bulls team still not have a clear direction, or is it just confidence in their roster, right? And so I can see it from all point of views, and you guys know I try to talk about things from every perspective possible, right? And then I'll talk about how I feel on it. Now, not moving off pieces where your value is not there, I'm not mad at that, right? I could never be mad at a team and the Bulls in the front office not selling off some of their pieces if the value around the league that they're trying to lowball them. Like, we look at how much we're complaining about the Alex Caruso's trade still. And by we, I mean like as a fan base, not everybody, because at some point you just got to get over things. Some Bulls fans never will. Hell, there's still Bulls fans that have been bringing up the Keith Bogans thing in actual conversation. I'm just like, come on, y'all. It's been a whole lifetime since then. But anyway. But as much as Bulls fans generally, again, look at every trade deadline that goes by, if the Bulls don't make a move, some Bulls fans just look at that as an automatic failure. Oh, you didn't do nothing at the trade deadline. Why didn't we do nothing? That's a fail again. And I'll say this, I can understand with the way that Zach and Vučević are playing, if you're not getting value back, and equal value is not there. I want to be clear for the people that are like, well, if we trade Zach LaVine, we need to get Anthony Davis. Like, come on now, stop smoking that stuff. Right? But at the same time, you don't want to sell at the point to where you're getting pennies on the dollar. Like, for example, let's go off the last time we heard a rumor about Vučević's trade value. 2 second-round picks. That's not the value of Nikola Vučević. Vučević is at least worth a first-round pick. And yes, I get it, that if he's going to a contender, it's going to be a low first-round pick, but he's at least worth that. Hell, we reportedly got offered 2 second-round picks for Andre Drummond last season. So you mean to tell me that Vučević, even though not the defender with the season that he's having, Vučević is having a top 5 center in the league offensive production this year. And so you're trying to tell me that production is worth 2 second-round picks? No, I won't be mad if the Bulls do not strike. Now, at some point, though, you got to add clarity to your roster. I think it's a couple of different things going on here, right? Is that I think in a normal situation, let's say that the Bulls had their pick outright. I don't think there'll be as many people saying, oh my God, we got to trade off these guys because we got to keep that top 10 pick. Now, I understand that mindset, but I think that is like the Bulls, if depending on how they hold the value, is that they may say, damn that pick. And I'm not saying that that's the right scenario to look at, but they may say that because like you do you want to get value back or do you want to continue to sell off? Like the NBA is about momentum. And if you're the front office that continually gives up players at a value that is less than what they're worth, at that point, when you go to the negotiation table, everybody is expecting to fleece you. And I can understand that side of it. Now, will the Bulls, as they get closer, like right now, the asking price should be high. And the question that a lot of people have asked is that as this goes forward and the Bulls see, hey, if we still are on a 32-win pace at the end of January, right, our point differential is still that of a 28 to 30-win team, maybe that's when the Bulls are like, hey, all right, let's do some things. But if also, you got to look at it this way, and this is the thing that I think, and I know a lot of Bulls fans are like, we have to be in the 6 to guarantee we're going to keep our pick or at least number 8. Like, if you feel like you're on a projection to keep your top 10 pick, right, if you're on that path with these players that you have here, there's really no value. Well, I'm going to say no value. It's no harm necessarily in keeping your players and waiting until the draft to move. Because the way that works then is what if you can move up a couple of spots? Right? Or what if you get, like, once teams know where they're drafting? Because keep in mind, this is a very deep draft, right? Despite some, people who more so just look at the stat sheet and are trying to act like this draft isn't as deep as what it is, this is a very deep draft. And so the Bulls value, once teams know where their pick sits, let's say that a team that is having a low first-round pick, but they have some hope, right, of who's going to be there, maybe you do move Vooch at the draft, right, and you get the number 21 pick back and some filler. In that case, like, there's always that flexibility as well, right? So it's that aspect of things where you don't want to sell off your players if the value isn't there on the open market that is worth what they're getting. Again, equal value, no, but you want to get value back for players that are playing really good. Now, on the flip side of that as well, the Bulls fans are going to look at this and say this is another sign of lack of direction by this front office. And you could very well be right? Like the one thing that really could be a detriment to this team for the present and for the future is that if this Bulls team makes the play-in and gets eliminated from the play-in, and then at that point, let's say that their pick falls at number 11. Let's just say that it's number 11 that their pick falls at. And had you not made that play-in, you would have kind of guaranteed you to keep your top 10 pick, and you have nothing to show for it other than some development for your young guys. That could be a very bad scenario for the Chicago Bulls. And I would also say this. Valuing your talent is good. Overvaluing your talent could be just as detrimental to your team as well. And that's what it comes down to, that the Bulls have to walk this fine line. I get it. As fans, we look at it in a very linear sense. That's the luxury that we have as fans of a team and not people that actually run a basketball team. We get to look at it very linearly, right? Very surface level. And, while the Bulls have not yet overvalued, clearly they haven't overvalued their talent. I think that they've overvalued their place, right? I think that they've overvalued their standing in the Eastern Conference and looked at that and thought that they were closer than what they are, when honestly a lot of us saw the writing on the wall 2 years ago. And at the front office saw 2 years ago, we could be sitting in a place where we are in a much better position as far as direction and clarity on where we're going. And it seems like AK does have that reputation as being a guy that, listen, if you tell him, if you're saying there's a chance to make the play-in, he's gonna dive into that, right? And so, it could be triggering for some. It could be upsetting for some others, right? Or it could be a sign that, hey, this is what, how many voicemails do we listen to on mailbag days on the weekends every single time where you hear fans saying, hey, we're not that far off. We just need to add a defender. We just need to add some three-point shooting. We just need to add that. And then we can what? We can what? And that's the and I don't mean to sound like a jackass when I say that, but it's really, but we can what? Right? Let's say that you add that big man depth. We can what then? Do you really think that one player is going to change the whole defensive flaws of the Chicago Bulls team? Well, I'm sorry. Yes, a mobile, athletic, defensive big man that can also get up in transition and score a little bit would do wonders for this team. Absolute wonders for this team. But it's not really going to transform when you look at the weak perimeter defense, when you look at how much we allow penetration. Because like I've said before, yes, we allow a lot of points in the paint, but it's not like we're just allowing big men to score a big on us on the paint. It's from penetration out on the perimeter. So the Bulls have to get that aspect together. And one big man, I don't care if they're the most shot-blocking big man in the league, is only going to change that so much. You can only change so much. The greatest shot blockers in the league, in league history, couldn't necessarily make this Bulls defense be a plus defense with the lack of perimeter defense and execution that we have consistently. So, that's another thing as well, right? But as we get forth into this trade deadline, I've said it before, it could be an interesting trade deadline, and we could see another one where not much happens at all. And I know for a fact, because again, as long as I've been doing this show, I get it, my Bulls fans and their thought process, and and how this is going to go as far as if the Bulls don't make a move. The one thing I'll say is this: I would love to see the Bulls go all in on a direction finally, right? I would love to see that. And I get the calls, the clamoring, the desire. I get all of that to want to see that happen for this Chicago Bulls team. But I think we have to put ourselves in the reality of it as well. This is still a business. And I don't mean that in the sense of selling tickets in the United Center. That's not what I mean by this. But I mean that you have to have somebody that's willing to do deals with you. And if the people that are willing to do deals with you are lowballing you on a move, right? It's does that really benefit? And I get it that for the Bulls fans that just look at it again in a linear fashion of, we got to do everything to keep that top 10 pick. We got to do everything to keep that top 10 pick. It's like, okay, but you get that top 10 pick and you have no assets really to do anything else around them. Or you've given up some young players that could be really good running mates for that young player, or players that are still young, but those young vets that I label them, like Kobe is a young vet, right? They can help their development, and they come in like we've seen it before. We've seen it many times. How many young players get drafted to a team? Anthony Davis before he went to the Lakers. DeMarcus Cousins with the Kings, right? Zion, now Zion can't stay healthy, so maybe Zion isn't that. That we've seen so many young players that do have talent that then go to a team that has no direction, that has no base at all other than them. And then they just sit around for 5, 6, 7 years and don't accomplish shit, right? So that's still a thing that this team, that this front office has to look at as well and value, because, yeah, you can get a top 10 guy in this draft. And let's say you get the right guy. That doesn't finish shit. That's the start of something. And I tell you what, I know people will say, well, then players are going to want to come with that player. We had Derrick Rose in his prime and couldn't sign top-tier free agents to save our fucking life. So, no, it's not just as simple as you get a guy, then boom, everything goes right for you. Dame Lillard in Portland, right? So it's not that simple. And I'm sorry, I hate to tell you guys, for the people that say, we just need to use the OKC model. The Bulls aren't trading players that were at the level that OKC did, and OKC got a budding star, a player that developed into a star in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander out of a trade that ended up being the best player in that trade, and then they drafted well over time, right? They got Chet, right? And then they were able to make free agent moves that made sense with Isaiah Hardenstein, or trades to trade one of their young players to get like a Alex. It's not as simple as saying, let's do what OKC did, because OKC didn't just do one thing and flip the switch and they were there. They built over time. They competed for play-ins, yes, but they drafted well over time. So I get it, and I have the hope too. I have the hope that the Bulls will get lucky in this draft, and a player's going to come in here, and then between him and Manas Bucilis over the next 2 or 3 years are going to develop into stars, and then bam, we're off to the races. But this front office also has to think about all things involved, and so we'll see. It could really go either way. The front office could be overvaluing their assets. We could lead them to do nothing. The Bulls could be holding the right value and not wanting to sell low on players that are playing extremely well right now. But a direction has to be chosen eventually. And as much as you kick the can down the road, the direction is eventually going to choose you. And that's what this front office has. The place that you do not want to be in sports is that your direction chooses you rather than you choose your direction. Right? Now, sometimes that works out as well. Sometimes your direction chooses you and you have a young player that you didn't expect to turn into a star, Jokic. And then your direction chooses you. I still think they scouted well in that case too. But so, the Bulls, the front office, hey, listen, none of us are happy with the front office, right? I think that, you have some people that look at what they do more favorable, give a little bit more bail than others, and I can understand that as well. But ultimately, it just comes down to this, like, the Bulls got to figure some shit out. And that figuring it out isn't always what us as fans thinks that it should look like. But we got to see the results. And right now, the results are you have a team that is fighting for 32 wins. So we'll see where that leads us. But with that said, the December 15th deadline is coming up. It's 4 days away as of this recording. And that's when a lot of players, or most of the players around the league are eligible to be moved at that point. The Bulls have 2 players on their roster that are eligible at that December 15th deadline. That's Talen Horton-Tucker and Jalen Smith. Now, we actually have an article in which Andrew Hanlon is actually pushing for the Bulls to trade Jalen Smith because of the value that he has there. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. THT. I want to talk a little bit about THT and the value that he has for the Bulls and if teams could be maybe interested in THT. Now, I know. Shout out to Deanna. I know she loves THT. She's going to, me seeing this, she's probably going to message me like, hey, bruh, what we doing? You trying to move THT? No, I'm not trying to move THT, but I am trying to, I'm going to lay out something here. Talen Horton-Tucker is having one of his best seasons, not necessarily statistically, but he is having a really good season for the Chicago Bulls. When you look at it, he's being more efficient than really what he's ever been in his career. He's averaging less points, 7.2, whereas other times he's averaged, 10 points per game, but he did that in almost 20 minutes. THT is actually benefiting from a more streamlined role with this team. And also, what THT has been able to do so far is he's basically been able to operate as a high-volume player with the Chicago Bulls' young bench unit because they have unproven players. So THT is able to actually get a usage rate that is closer to that of a starter when he's out there on the court because he's playing like THT's best minutes are when he's out there with the Dalens, Julian Phillips, the Domantas Bucilises, right? The Bulls bench unit. He's actually least efficient when he shares the court either with Kobe White, Zach LaVine, or Nikola Vučević. Any of those combination of players when he's out on the court, THT is actually a net negative for the Bulls. But I'm not here to crap on THT at this point in time. That's not what I'm trying to do at all. I'm just trying to say that THT has shown himself to be. He's being efficient right now as a bench player. And with you looking at teams trying to add some value at the trade deadline, maybe THT could be one of those guys. Now, I get it. THT is playing great for the Bulls. But let's keep in mind here, Talen Horton-Tucker was a player that very well could have ended up in the G League. He had to take a training camp day deal by the Chicago Bulls to even make a team this year. And if you're able to turn that into, I don't care if you can turn that into a second-round pick, that's tremendous value. And when we're looking at a front office that is trying to take advantage of value, right, they haven't necessarily done it, I can understand why THT could be included in other deals, right? Maybe you sweeten the pot with THT who's on a vet minimum. We talked about how Torrey Craig as a vet minimum could really net you something back. Maybe that's the case as well for THT. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm not mad at 24-year-old looking like 34-year-old Talen Horton-Tucker staying on my team. I'm not mad at that because he's been a productive player. But when you look at it, he has a 22 usage rate. A 22 usage rate. For the number of minutes that he's playing, that's actually pretty huge, right? And so that's something that the Bulls have to ask themselves. And listen, he's shooting 68% true shooting percentage. Shout out to THT for being an efficient player because one of the knocks on him is that, yeah, he got 10 points, but he did so on like 9 shots, which isn't necessarily the best, right? So, but he's playing really good right now for this Bulls. And he's taking 4 shots and getting 7 points out of that. He's shooting 55% from the field, 51% from three-point range. THT is a player that, when he becomes available between now and his guaranteed date, that's another thing that's important in this, right? Is that if the Bulls were to make a move, I'm not saying that they will, if they were to make a move before his guaranteed date, which is January, mid-January, I think it's maybe early January. If they were to make a move before then, even if the team didn't necessarily see THT being a long-term part of their roster, they can waive him. No harm, no foul. And so that's the type of asset that you can use to sweeten the pot, right? And so I'm not mad if the Bulls do that. It depends on what the move is. I'm saying that THT becomes fully guaranteed on January 10th. So that's about a month before the trade deadline. So the Bulls could have that flexibility there. Now, Jalen Smith is a player that has played very productive in his minutes for the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls are a plus positive when he's on the court for them. And this writer, Andrew Hanlon, who says that the Bulls should look to move Jalen Smith, I don't necessarily agree with that, right? Now, I understand there, much like the thought process with THT. He's on a very reasonable contract. You just signed him, but he's a young player. And again, unless you're getting another big back, now some could say that by moving THT, are you helping also to guarantee you keeping your top 10 pick because you have no depth at the big man position? But these are players to look out for, right? And as the trade deadline comes and the Bulls' direction hopefully materializes, right, we'll see what they have here. But the Bulls, basically their whole entire roster is going to be available for trade at December 15th. And a lot of teams that we're hearing trade rumors about Jimmy Butler and Brandon Ingram and other ones. The trade season is heating up. Now, will the Bulls sit this one out again? There is a chance for that, and I know my Bulls fans are not going to be happy about that. But we'll see what the future holds for this Bulls team. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. Let's get into the next topic, the last topic before we get up out of here. Patrick Williams was a full participant in yesterday's non-contact practice, and Billy Donovan did say that he is scheduled to be a full participant in contact and a scrimmage field practice today, right? So that's really good to hear. I'll probably go live shortly after practice ends today, so you probably get a live from me later on, because I do think that with having a scrimmage-based practice, a lot of details are going to come out. I wouldn't be surprised if they open that up to media. So we'll see what happens there when it comes down to it. But Patrick Williams getting back on the basketball court is good for a few reasons. You want all your guys, the defense that he brings, and even for my people that want to see Patrick Williams move and traded, he's not like, you want him on the court to help that trade value, right? So that he can eliminate any questions about his health and that foot, considering it was the foot he had surgery on. So, we'll see what happens when it comes down to that. I'm glad that Patrick Williams is making a return to practice, and we just got to see where this is going to go for P. Will. Is he going to come back? And like I said over on Locked on Bulls, is he going to be motivated by seeing the young guys on this team, the way that they've stepped up while he's been gone? And I've said it before, if Modest Bucelis gets that starting position from Patrick Williams, with the way that Modest is growing even on the defensive side of the ball, not to say that Patrick Williams will be out of the rotation, but he may not get that starting position back. So this is the time for Patrick Williams to come back. He's talked about being excited about getting back on the basketball court. Well, we need to see that excitement in your play, young fella. We need to see that excitement in your play. And if we do, hey, great. A motivated Patrick Williams who's playing really good, who's playing motivated to get back in what he did like in December, we'll see. We'll see. But let me know your thoughts on everything down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.